In the last episodes, we had found a free car, bought a manual swap to replace our blown automatic transmission, stripped and dyed some of the interior, and we placed our order with FCP Euro. With just the weekend to finish prepping the car for our part delivery, we set to work sanding the entire car with steel wool and removing any last pieces that would need to be painted or covered. Alright, I know some of you are asking why we don't strip this car out completely. The simple answer is, I want to drive this thing everywhere, and having the interior in is going to make it a lot easier, at least to start. And don't get me wrong, when the time comes, I'll be the first one to put a cage in it and weld the rear doors shut myself. So we hit the fabric store in search of inexpensive fabric to cover the interior and some spray glue to hold it all together. And with a huge selection, I was having a hard time deciding what to use. I mean, a monkey interior would be cool, but in the end, we decided to do something a bit more traditional. Black micro suede. And at 60% off, the bill wasn't too bad either. Since the whole interior was out, we started covering everything. This included the sliding sunroof portion too. So it was removed, stripped, glued, and recovered. Right on cue, it's Monday morning and the FCP order just arrived. The first thing we're going to tackle are the plastic window sliders and work on replacing the door latches with some spares to get the doors to shut. Replacing these latches isn't a totally easy task. We have to align both the door lock rods and both door handles too. But as you can see, I'm pretty confident I remember how everything goes back in. After the door latches were done, we tackled the window regulators with some new plastic sliders. Cleaning and lubing the tracks with some white lithium grease got everything working again. And after putting on the vapor barrier, now we have doors that shut and windows that open. Next, we took the carpet back out, and with a ton of help from my buddy Tony, we were able to not only remove the exhaust and drive shaft, but the automatic transmission too. And all this in just a few minutes. Now, if you've ever tried to remove any transmission, you know how much of a pain it can be to reach all the bolts. With this tranny though, we literally didn't even have a chance to set up the camera, it happened so fast. At first we assumed it was because Tony was a BMW magician or something, or he had just cut through all the bolts. But the real reason was a little less cool. How do I say this? Instead of the 11 bolts BMW used, the last owners only left us 4. So here we are, very early start of I guess what would be day 4. We did Friday, Saturday, Sunday last week, and like I said, this is really early. Literally looks like the car blew up. Fingers crossed the motor holds together. It's been soaking in diesel all night, so we'll see if that did anything to break up all that sludge in there. It may last, a week. It may last an hour. We're not quite sure yet. So we got to hit it hard today. Speaking of the motor, we just removed the valve cover, and I think we just found the source of our noise. There's crusty old oil everywhere. At 205,000 miles, this motor looks like it's had a pretty hard life, because this is just nasty. My guess is either the oil hasn't been changed in 10 years, or this cracked valve cover and missing oil seal might be the issue. It may not seem like much, but once you let moisture into the valve train, anything is possible, even this. And every expert we talked to said we should just add more gas, light this thing on fire, and call it quits. No way. We can't let this project end like this. We're putting this motor on a strict seafoam and diesel diet to help it clear its veins. I guess we're going to get a chance to see how tough these motors really are. But being excited to try this is one thing. In all seriousness, looking at this oil buildup, we're really not sure what's going to happen. I mean, this is about as good as we can get it looking using diesel. And where the oil filter housing attaches to the side of the motor is even worse. We can actually scrape out chunks of old oil. To be clear, we're talking about in here, not out here. You can only imagine what the rest of the inside of the motor looks like. Well, after pouring about a gallon of diesel over this motor, we've done all we can. No doubt a huge improvement from when we first started, but still, this is nothing I'd wish even on a Volkswagen owner. And the cool thing about this point in the build, from now on, parts are only going back on the car. I didn't start playing the trumpet. This is this is the new power steering cooler lines that we have, and of course the new power steering reservoir. A lot of you may or may not know that inside there's actually a filter. So as your power steering gets old, burnt up and whatnot, it can get clogged up. So you want to take care of that. It's cheap money, and it might save a power steering pump. So I'm going to install that right now. So what I like to do when I'm taking assemblies apart is just to take a little scrap piece of cardboard, and as I remove the bolts, I'll just go ahead and put them in the same orientation. So essentially this shows you the oil filter housing bolt orientation with the two down here for the power steering pump. This is real cheap money, especially when we're so deep into the motor, to make sure that we don't have any leaks further down the line. So with the new gasket installed, I've just got a little bit of engine oil here, and I'm just going to run it around the edges of the seal to make sure that it doesn't get caught on anything, doesn't rub or rip. There's two alignment pegs on this oil filter housing assembly, so it's really not too bad to align the upper right here, click it into place, and then start running your bolt through. Finishing up with the alternator here. I'm going to put this protective cover back on. This actually has two bolts, one of which has a nut on the backhand side. So I'm going to start with the bottom nut bolt first. With the help of my assistant, we were able to put on the serpentine belt and finish the engine portion of this rebuild. Check back next week to see us finish this manual transmission swap and finally gain access to the 3-pedal club. Also, we start saying goodbye to this red paint.